Hey guys, today what we're going to do is cover how to replace the CV boot on your Humvee or Hummer H1 half shaft. So let me preface this video by saying you do not have to replace the entire unit if you have a torn boot. There are a lot of options out there. I personally would say stick with the OEM or OE supplier for the boots if you can find them. I know that HPG, HummerPartsGuy.com, they've got the boots and they run probably around $30 to $35 each side. So if you've got two torn boots, you're looking at approximately $60 to $70 for the entire half shaft. The reason I mention this is because if we look at the alternative, which I'm seeing a lot of people do, is go and they eliminate this entire unit and just buy a brand new one. While that sounds enticing, we got to remember that the quality is just not the same, folks. So one of the things that I really like about the OEM units is although they're tired, you can rebuild them. You can easily rebuild these things, and just by throwing on a boot. Some of the cages are available, but I think what you'll find is a majority of the time they're in pretty good shape. So my recommendation is if you've got a torn boot, just repair the boot. Don't go out and spend $150 on a half shaft. That's going to be inferior in quality and leave you stranded somewhere where you don't want to be. So again, stick with OEM. And I think this is just a better, cheaper route to go in terms of servicing your half shafts. So before I dive in, one of the first things that we need to do is we need to know what is involved with this process. The first thing that you're going to need, the negotiator. That's right, your rubber mallet. You're going to need Oetiker crimping tool. So if anybody is wondering what in the world is an Oetiker crimping tool, first thing we need to remember is that there's clamps that hold these boots in place. There are two types of clamps. One is an Oetiker clamp, which is essentially a clamp that goes around. It has a couple slots. You put it in the slot, and then what you do is you just crimp it and it tightens up. That's an Oetiker clamp. The other one, which I'm not personally a fan of, is you wrap a band around it and there's a couple tabs that you bend over to keep that band tight. That's it. So I would definitely say stick with the Oetiker style clamp, and it's probably going to last you a little bit longer. Third thing, you're going to need some pliers to be able to open and expand C-clips. There's a few on here that I'll discuss. And so you're definitely going to need to be able to have a pretty robust tool to be able to open up those C-clips. And then lastly, very easy to access, this I've got a very small flathead screwdriver. So if you've got a regular one, it might be a little bit difficult, but you need something a little bit smaller like this guy, because you'll see. So again, we've got these four components here that you're going to need to completely service the half shafts. So set these aside and let's just get right into it. First thing that we need to understand is how this is all assembled. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've cleaned up the internal parts of this half shaft, and the reason being is it does get messy. One of the things I would definitely recommend having is get yourself some nitrile gloves, lots of rags, paper towels, because when you get to opening up these boots, depending upon how old that grease is in there, mine were pretty old and it came out like black soup. So it was pretty messy, and when that stuff gets on anything, it pretty much stains it. So I would just recommend having lots of rags available and some gloves. So the first thing that you're going to do to remove the boots is we really need to understand how this all is assembled. This end, which is going to be the portal hub end, This is not, you can't disassemble this unless you really press it out of its collar and everything like that. So what we want to do is, even if you've got a boot that's on the portal hub side, we can still replace it. It just means that we have to take the rotor side off, which is fine. We're going to have to do that anyway. So in either case, what we're going to do is we're going to dismantle this side of the half shaft to be able to access both of these boots, whichever one that you're replacing. The first thing that you're going to want to do, there is a clamp on the inner and the outer edges of the boot. The simple thing here is either take pliers or take a small Dremel, and you just want to cut those clamps off, because with the new boot kit you're going to have new clamps. So that's the first thing that you'll want to do, and it's actually fairly easy on the Otacrew clamps. If you run into those, you'll notice that there's a small little tab, and I don't have one readily available here, but there's a small little tab that you just fold over, and then you just put a small flathead underneath the shoulder of one of the ends of the clamps, and then just use a hammer and it'll snap free. Otherwise, feel free to just cut it off or get a Dremel, whatever you want to do. So once you've got those off, the next thing you want to do is open up these casings. So what you'll do is you'll simply slide this over. You'll simply slide this off this hub here, and then what you want to do is slowly work the boot up the center of the shaft. The reason we're doing that is because we're going to need a little bit of room to work in here to be able to dismantle this assembly. So the first thing that you'll want to do is get your pliers, and I'm going to zoom in here to show you what you're going to need to tackle. Alright, so right here we've got a small recession where a clip goes into. Now, for the sake of time, I've already pulled it off just to keep this video as short as possible, but this is what the clip looks like. And this clip, again, just fits right in this location right here. So when it's facing up, or however you got it, what you're going to want to do is you want to take your pliers, and you're going to want to spread that clip open and then slide it down this shaft a little ways and out of the way. So again, I've already removed this clamp, but that's going to be the first process. So just open that up, slide it down the shaft, and leave it at that. Once you've done that, what you can do is then want to take this cage apart that is part of the assembly. So one thing that you'll see is we've got ball bearings in there, all kinds of stuff going on. But one thing you will notice is if I point right over here, let me just use the flathead. So if I point right here, you can actually see there's a small clip right here. So what's happening is this clip just fits inside this small groove, and that eliminates the ability for this assembly to come out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to find the end of the clip, which is right here at the bottom of the screen, and I'm just going to stick that flathead in there, and you'll see it clip just kind of started coming out, and now I can just pull that clip out and away. So there you go, there's a clip. Pull that out, set that aside. Next thing you're going to do, and again, remember there's going to be grease all in here, so more than likely the ball bearings are going to stay in place. This whole assembly now is free to come out. So what we're going to want to do is just pull this assembly out slowly. We don't have the ball bearings running all over the place. Set that aside, and then we just go ahead and pull these bearings out. Set those aside, and now what you're going to be left with is the cage, which if you rotate you see, once that's lined up, it won't come out. But when you, like that, it'll actually slide forward. So we'll slide that forward and out of the way. And you'll see we've got this, the other part of where the bearing retainer is. So what's unique about this is that we've already got this clip that was here in the beginning moved up towards here. So now what we're going to do is we're actually just going to tap this unit forward. Don't need too much, just enough. And then what we'll do is, you'll see here, to bring it into focus, is there's a small clip. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's that purple clip right there. What that does is that prevents this part from sliding off the shaft. So what we're going to need to do is pretty simple. We're just going to want to remove that clip. So again, just using the trusty screwdriver, I'm just going to slide it over the edge, and then just kind of work its way off, and then it snaps off. There you go. It was easy. All right. So at this point, we've got the clip off. Now we can actually take that rubber negotiator, tap that off, and now you're free. So we've got this unit off, which we can set aside, and now the cage can slide out. Now, one thing to note, when you slide this cage out, let me just show you, notice how the beveled edge, or the smaller end, is facing towards the center of the shaft. You'll want to remember this when you put it back together. So we got that, we're going to set that aside. Now at this point, what we're going to do is we're just going to slide the boot off. So what we've got here is the boot. We're just going to slide it off. And that's it. Now if you're replacing the boot on the rotor side, in that case, you would just slide the new boot on and reverse the process and you'd be done. In this case, just in the event that you are needing to replace the portal hub end, it's the same concept. This isn't rocket science. You just take this off, and then what you would do is you would essentially just slide this boot off the shaft. So you can see I just started sliding it. Now you'll notice that little indentation right there is what the boot fits into. So that's why it was a little bit difficult at the beginning to get it started, but once you get started, you just slide it all off, slide the new boot on, and then you'll feel it snap into place right here. So we've gone through actually the hard part at this point because you've went ahead and removed the boots. One thing that I would say is you want to make sure that if you put the new boot on and you had some of the grease come out or was stuck inside the old boot, you'll want to re-grease these. The boot kits will come with new grease, so you'll just want to make sure that you replace the grease that has fallen out. Now, reassembly, pretty straightforward stuff again. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and reverse the process. So in this case, we're just going to take our new boot and we're going to go ahead and slide it in, just like this. Remember, we want to give ourselves a little bit of space. And I think I didn't mention, but if you're having trouble, you know, I mentioned at the beginning of the video where you've got this clip and it's on the shaft. If you're having any trouble getting the boot off, you can always just take a screwdriver and kind of stretch it up and over this clip if it's here, or you can remove the clip entirely. It's completely up to you. But if you remove the clip entirely, once you've got the new boot on or slid over the shaft, now's the time to reinstall this clip. So what I would do is I would go ahead and slide this down, and again we're going to go past these notches and just somewhere around here. So once you have that in place, it's just a simple process of going in reverse order. We're going to take the cage that we had here. And what we're going to do is we're going to remember we want the smaller end facing towards the center of the shaft. So we're just going to slide that in there, set that aside. Then we're going to take this race here, and what we're going to do is we're going to install this next. Now, one thing to note is when I show you this, you'll notice that side has a square end right here, but this side has a beveled end. So you want to make sure that the square end, this end here, is facing towards the end of the shaft, because the clip that goes into the end of this shaft right here is going to prevent the race here from sliding out. So again, beveled in towards the center of the shaft, and the 90-degree or more rigid end right there towards the end of the shaft. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Tap that down. Just want to tap that down just enough so that we can see that small clip right there, or I should say the indentation there. And then we're going to take our clip and we're going to install it right in here. So once we get that, we're just going to do something like this. So I just put one end into the slot and then I just pull it around and then it slaps into place. So you can see that. Now, here's the tricky part. What we have to do is we have to compress this clip that we just put in, and we've got to tap this race towards the end of the shaft. So I usually just tap it little ways to get to the edge, and then I kind of just push these ends in, the screwdriver. As you can see, it's not as easy as I wish it would be. Let me actually just go back here so you can see it, because I think I'm getting out of view. Alright, so there we go. So you see, I tap the end. It's almost to the very end. It'll stop. Don't worry. Then at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to take that clip that we were talking about earlier that you had already installed, and you're going to slide that clip into the groove located right there. So once that clip is sealed or seated, then at this point what we can do is we can slide the race over, and again you're going to notice that if this right here is lined up with this spline here, it won't go on. You got to rotate it, and then once it's on, then you can rotate it again. Just like that. So, we've got that in place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the ball bearings. I'm going to place those ball bearings in place. It might be a little tricky for me as I put together this unit because I don't have any grease holding them in place, but I think we can do it. Alright, so here's the fun part. Is now I've got the hub, and I'm just going to slide the hub over, and I'm going to rotate because there's channels that the bearings, so you saw right there. Now the unit's in. At this point, what we're going to do, let me just angle this so you can see. At this point, we have it in there. We got the grease in there. We want to put some extra grease in the with the bearings. And we're going to take our clip, and then I just put one end in, and then the other end in. You can just do that by hand. And at that point, this unit is installed, so you're good. So you can see I got full functionality of the half shaft. And now you just slide the boot over. Again, on the end of on the part of the shaft right here towards the center, there's going to be a small indentation that the boot will fit into, so you'll feel it slide in, and then we're just going to slide the boot over the end just like that. And that's it, folks. It doesn't need to be any more difficult than that. Again, this process is not that difficult. I think this video took, what, 20 minutes? So, and I went through it pretty detailed, but you know, it should take you probably about 30 minutes to get the half shaft out, and of course, maybe another 30 minutes, 40 minutes to get this thing all taken apart and then reinstalled. And hopefully this video helps you feel a little bit more confident being able to do so, as you know, when I first took these things apart, I really wasn't sure how everything went together, so I was kind of taking my time. But that is it. Again, $30 to $35 for these boots, for the OEMs. I know there are a couple of alternatives out there, like the Dormans. Again, I would just stick probably to the OEM. These right here are actually probably around 20 years old, and they're still in really good shape. So I've reconditioned these, and these are going to be put on some of my spares. So I'm actually keeping these boots. I'm just going to throw some new clamps on. But that is it, folks. Again, I can't emphasize enough that this is actually a very easy process to go through. Don't spend $150 on a new shaft. They're inferior in quality. They're likely to become half of a shaft, and so stick with the OEM shafts and just replace those boots. If you have any questions, comments, be sure to subscribe, whatever it is. We're going to be doing more videos like this to help you Humvee and Hummer H1 owners be able to service your vehicles. Be sure to stay tuned, and until then, drive safe.